Minecraft Dungeons has left me feeling rather conflicted. On one hand, the game is obviously well made, it's a lot of fun in co-op, and it serves as a pretty decent introduction to the ARPG Dungeon Crawler genre, yet on the other hand, it's fairly shallow, it has some incredibly frustrating design, and other than its presentation, it surprisingly shares very little with the game that it's supposedly based on. To be honest, I feel that this is one of those occasions where your thoughts and opinions are going to skew heavily based on perspective. In this video, I'm going to attempt to break things down to the point where we're able to judge the game on its own merits, while also explaining why certain biases may ultimately factor into whether or not this game is going to be of any interest to you, so let's get right to it. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Pixel, and you're watching the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel. To start off with, let's dive into the basics of how the game looks, feels, and plays. The good news is that for the most part, the core of Minecraft Dungeons is actually pretty solid. Presentation wise, the game nails the Minecraft aesthetic while also making good use of the Unreal Engine's lighting, particle systems, and post-processing. It's also worth noting that while the audio for the most part is understated, it also is of a very high standard. Most importantly, however, Minecraft Dungeons appears to be fairly well optimized, which may not come as much of a surprise considering the art style, but still, decent optimization is something that should never really be taken for granted. On our SAPPHIRE PULSE RX 5600 XT at a 1440p resolution, while using the game's maximum settings, we saw an average frame rate well above the 150 FPS mark, which really is rather impressive when you take into consideration the overall image quality and the amount of enemies and effects on screen at any one time. This level of performance not only helps the game look nice and smooth, but it also vastly improves the feel and fluidity of combat, which is the thing that you're going to spend the vast majority of your time doing while playing pretty much any ARPG Dungeon Crawler, and Minecraft Dungeons is certainly no exception. Combat itself feels okay, though it has to be said that it does somewhat lack the impact that we see in more mature dungeon crawlers, partly due to the lack of gore, and partly due to the game's slower pacing. As you get further into the game, combat can start to feel more rewarding as things start to get pretty crazy in terms of enemy density, diversity, and even your own weapons' visual effects. Since Minecraft Dungeons is a very loot heavy game, you're going to be spending a lot of your time in menus, checking out new gear, enchanting weapons and armor, and optimizing your current build. In most ARPGs, this can be quite an involved process with lots of individual systems to learn and many complex interfaces to navigate. Minecraft Dungeons, however, rolls with a much simpler progression system and thus a streamlined user interface that allows you to pretty much control everything from within a single screen. This not only speeds up the process, but it also makes it much easier to come to grips with. This streamlined approach can actually be felt throughout the entire game. Considering its ARPG label, you may be surprised to find that the game contains no character stats, classes, skill points, economy, or crafting. Your abilities are linked directly to artifacts, of which you can have 3 equipped at any one time, and these are basically pieces of loot. Their power is dictated by their level, they often have cooldowns, and some of them even require that you have souls to activate them. If you're wondering, you gather souls by slaying enemies. As well as these 3 artifact slots, you'll also have 3 additional slots for equipping a melee weapon, ranged weapon, and armor. The majority of the game's complexity revolves around these weapons and armors, as they come in a range of rarities, have set power levels, sometimes grant passive abilities, and most importantly, they have enchantments. As you progress through the game and gain enough experience, you'll level up. Unlike most games with a leveling system, your character is not actually going to get any stronger as they level, at least not directly. Instead, each time that you level up, you will receive an enchantment point that can be plugged into certain pieces of equipment in order to increase their effectiveness or add certain modifiers. These are, without a doubt, the things that have the biggest impact on actual gameplay. In fact, I'd even go as far to say that the enchantment system is one of the game's biggest saving graces. I'll explain why in a bit more detail shortly, but first let's have a quick look at some of those flaws that I mentioned earlier. Minecraft Dungeons gets a fair bit right, but honestly some little design decisions have me scratching my head. For instance, you have a health potion and that health potion has a single charge that has a very long cooldown, around 45 seconds I believe. This means that you'll often get into fights that only last a few seconds, pop your heal once you're done, and then stand around twiddling your thumbs for the next 40 seconds for your health potion to come off cooldown, before jumping into your next fight and repeating the whole process again and again. It's even worse if you need to pop your potion early into a fight and then take additional damage, as this basically doubles the amount of time that you spend waiting. 40-ish seconds so you can heal back up to full, and then 45 more seconds so you can get your pots back off cooldown before your next fight. In the grand scheme of things, this may seem like a fairly benign problem or like I'm nitpicking, but the reality is, while playing the later levels on solo, I honestly spent more time stood around waiting for my cooldowns than I did actively playing the game. While thankfully this can and often will become much less of a frustration later on, mainly due to finding additional ways of gaining health, it's not really a problem that ever goes away entirely. Thankfully, in co-op things are not nearly as bad since you and your partner are both able to dip in and out of combat and tank damage for each other, meaning that you're both able to stay engaged in combat for much longer periods of time. The annoying thing is that you could quite literally lower the cooldown of the potion from around 45 seconds to around 15 seconds and barely even affect balance. That is of course providing that you tweak some of the enchantments that are based on health pot usage, but that is beside the point. I seriously don't understand any reason why this potion cooldown should be this long. This isn't a game where you slowly get ground down, it's a game where things are going great until they're not, and when they're not, a shorter cooldown is going to do basically nothing to prevent an almost instant death. Talking about instant death, another example of let's just say strange design is the way that lives are managed. Basically, you get 3 lives at the start of each level, and when they are gone, that's it, they're gone, it's game over, get kicked back to the camp and then start again. On the surface, there is nothing super wrong about a system like this, but that doesn't make it a good system by default. Since there's no way to recover lives while on a level, it can be super frustrating to die a couple of times very early on and then have the feeling that you may as well restart just so you can get those lives back. I would have much preferred that you start off with a single extra life, and once that life is used you'd have to do X amount of damage or gain X amount of experience in order to regain that life back. This means that dying would simply give you something to work towards rather than taking something away to the point where you question if it's even worth continuing. Not only would this make the process of dying feel better, but in a way it will provide much better balance than having 3 lives available all at once like now, because right now this can be pretty overpowered. Beyond these 2 examples, there are dozens more that I'm not going to dive into here, and these are things such as the way that ranged ammunition is handled, having to salvage gear to get your enchantment points back, how easy it is to abuse rolling off the map, horrible hidden chest locations, boring bosses, the way the game controls on PC, and even difficulty scaling. None of these things are what I would consider to be game breaking or even a deal breaker, but they can be frustrating and they most certainly did take away from my overall experience. Now, to be clear, I'm not trying to make out that Minecraft Dungeons is a bad game, because honestly, it's not. I play for around 10 to 11 hours, which is enough time to play the game from start to finish, including the 2 additional difficulty modes and all the secret levels, and while I found playing the game solo to be fairly boring and much more frustrating than with a friend, due mostly to the issues that I've already mentioned, I thankfully spent most of my time playing co-op, and I have to admit, my friend and I both managed to squeeze out a reasonable amount of enjoyment from this game. This brings me onto the hardest section of this video, biases. On one hand, Minecraft Dungeons is a relatively easy game to recommend. It's not all that expensive, especially if you've got Xbox Game Pass, it can be a lot of fun in co-op, the presentation ain't bad, and generally the game feels good to play. However, on the other hand, if you're a fan of Minecraft or if you've got a lot of experience with other ARPG Dungeon Crawlers, then there's a very good chance that your perspective and expectations are not going to align with what this game actually delivers on. You see, while Minecraft Dungeons obviously looks and sounds a lot like Minecraft and even has Minecraft in the title, it actually shares very little with what makes Minecraft, Minecraft. Not only in terms of its features, but also in terms of its concept. Personally, I would have expected a game set within the Minecraft universe to at least have some basic crafting and or the ability to build and destroy blocks, but there's nothing of the sort here. Even the procedural generation of the dungeons is lacking to the point where I have literally seen content creators not even realising that there's procedural generation in the first place. On a side note, I do find it interesting that procedural generation is even a thing here, since the game virtually offers zero replayability, which is something that we'll look into in a bit more depth shortly. Minecraft Dungeons also lacks much of what made Minecraft the juggernaut that it is today. Minecraft took over the world because of its practically infinite replayability and its ability to nurture creativity, both things that are pretty much non-existent in Dungeons. I'm not trying to say that this is a bad game because it lacks these previously mentioned elements, I'm simply trying to explain that if you come into this game with these sorts of expectations, you're likely going to be very disappointed, not because it's bad, but simply because your expectations won't be met. If you're a fan of Minecraft and you're able to jump into this one with an open mind and simply be happy that it looks and sounds like something that you're a fan of, then I think there's a very good chance that you're going to be able to find an awful lot to like here. When it comes down to whether or not fans of ARPGs in general are going to find much to enjoy here, well, that really depends. While Minecraft Dungeons does share a lot with most other ARPGs in terms of its core gameplay loop, the setup and the nuances are actually vastly different and in some ways polar opposites to what you'd normally expect from the genre. For better or worse, ARPG dungeon crawlers for the most part are built heavily upon the idea of repetition. You're basically expected to do the same content over and over again at varying difficulty levels, slowly amassing a haul of better, more interesting loot. You also have complex skill trees, character stats, and often many other features that you'll be juggling in order to develop a build. These games are designed to be played multiple times over long periods of time. There's a reason why so many Diablo, Torchlight, and Path of Exile players are clocking up not only hundreds but literally thousands of hours of playtime, despite experiencing most of the game's content in a fraction of that time. In comparison, Minecraft Dungeons is extremely light on both content and replayability, however that's not automatically a bad thing. The game can be completed in around 3 or 4 hours on a first playthrough, and then you've got 2 further difficulties to play through after that. All in all, you're looking at around a dozen or so hours till you've completed pretty much everything, all difficulties, max gear level, all secrets, everything. And once you've reached that point, I really don't see why most people would want to go back and start again, since there's no real character progression or permanent customization, and you're free to switch up your builds and try new things out at pretty much any time. All you need to do is re-roll a level where you know the equipment that you're after can be found, get said equipment, reassign your enchantment points, and boom, you've got yourself a new build, which is in stark contrast to the previously mentioned games where starting a new build pretty much encourages an entirely new playthrough. Put simply, other than playing with friends who are just starting out, there's little reason to bother with additional playthroughs in Minecraft Dungeons. The reason why I say this could actually be a good thing is because I'm somebody that does enjoy ARPGs but have struggled to be able to commit the time and effort required to play them properly, so it's nice to have a game like Minecraft Dungeons where I'm able to jump in at level 1 and play through to completion in just a few days. Where games like Path of Exile are somewhat like tucking into a beautiful 7-course gourmet meal, Minecraft Dungeons is somewhat like chomping on a bag of pick a mix, and I for one don't see anything wrong with that. To break it down, Minecraft Dungeons is an awesome game, even if it is a little bit flawed. I believe that if you go into this one with accurate expectations, you'll likely have a good time, and I also believe that it's a near perfect example of a game that parents could sit down with their kids and play together. All in all, I do wish that Minecraft Dungeons was actually more than it is, but hey, if wanting more is one of your only complaints, then surely things could be certainly much worse. With all that out of the way, that is once again going to be me done for today. If you are new around here, please do consider slapping that subscribe button and dinging that bell so you get notified of our future uploads. If you like this video, you can also like this video, and if you disliked it, there's a button for that too. I'd like to give you all a massive thank you from myself and everybody here at the Sapphire Tech YouTube channel for watching this video, and I'd also like to encourage you to leave any questions, suggestions or feedback down in the comment section below. However, for now, I'll be heading off, so until next time, I'll catch you later, thanks for watching again, and bye bye.